Jetzt sollte es gehen.
Yes.
Okay.
Should be working now. Good morning.
Damen und Herren, liebe Gäste
Good
hier
morning, everyone.
auf unserem Fachpodium.
Esteemed guests to this expert panel.
Freitagmorgen.
It's Friday morning. We're still waiting for the sun to come out, but we've been promised sunshine later on, and maybe we will be able to shed some light onto facts with this expert panel. It's wonderful to have all of you here today. And now I'd like to explain a little more what we will be doing in the 1 hour and 20 minutes that remain. The topic that brought you here is, of course, the bioeconomy and how the bioeconomy is linked to global food security. As you've probably seen, our panelists show quite clearly that we are taking an international perspective today. So once more, welcome on behalf of the German Agribusiness Alliance and also on behalf of IAMO, Leibniz Institute of Agricultural Development and Transition Economies. And one housekeeping remark, we have interpretation into German, English, Russian and Ukrainian. If you need a headset, a colleague here at the front can provide you with headsets. So, what we will be doing differently today is that we want to involve you in our discussion. And we will become more digital today in this expert panel. Normally, when you're in the cinema or theater, you will be told to switch off your mobile phones. Instead, we will be asking you today to have your smartphones ready to participate in a number of surveys that we will have here. So we will be doing polls, 2 or 3 during this expert panel. But we'll get to that later. We have a lot of different events in the CityCube today, so it's especially great to see that so many of you have decided to come here to this expert panel today because the topic is highly relevant. It's so important, as is underlined by the presence of Parliamentary State Secretary Claudia Müller, who's here today despite her busy schedule and some limitations. She not only accepted our invitation, but is actually here in person to address you with her welcoming remarks. State Secretary, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Guten Morgen, sehr geehrte Herren.
Good morning, ministers,
Sehr geehrte Frau Kovaljova,
Ms. Kovaljova, Dr. Hermans, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to see you here this morning after the opening of the International Green Week. It's the second day of our Global Forum for Food and Agriculture. And what we can see very nicely today is that the GFFA brings together pioneering thinkers from politics, industry, science and civil society. Every year we discuss solutions to the challenges of the agricultural and food sectors. This year's theme, as has been said before, might sound unwieldy at first, but it couldn't be any more up-to-date or relevant. Farming a sustainable bioeconomy. More than 50% of global value creation depend on a healthy environment as the basis for production, biological diversity, healthy soils, sufficient and clean water. And now one would assume that economies that depend so much on a healthy environment would protect nature. But unfortunately, we all know the truth. And we all know that we are living in times of global transformation that pose new challenges. And to be honest, maybe we are not up to tackling these challenges yet. Our global economy is still based way too much on fossil resources, leaving very visible tracks and traces. The climate crisis hits those particularly hard who can afford it the least, and especially our agricultural systems are facing massive challenges. Biodiversity is declining increasingly fast. It's a biodiversity crisis. 2, entire ecosystems are threatened, and this also means that entire landscapes are becoming less resilient. The number of people suffering from hunger or malnutrition is stagnating at a level that is much too high. We are a long way from reaching our goal of zero hunger by 2030. And here we have to face the facts too. The situation has been better before. We who deal with agricultural issues every day can set the right course for agriculture and nutrition, for a future where sustainable management is a matter of course and secures the basis of production and thus our livelihoods. It's time to change course. Bioeconomy approaches offer one opportunity to drive this transformation. They don't only reduce carbon emissions, but also create sustainable livelihoods for millions of people. And when we say livelihoods, then we also mean the economic basis. The bioeconomy offers promising prospects by relying on bio-based renewable resources and thus replaces fossil resources, hopefully, and also by linking sustainability and economic innovation. It's about technical innovations, but not only. It's also about changing the way we think. We have to understand our actions as part of a circle. Everything we do or don't do has consequences and ramifications. We don't only live off the environment, but with it. And that is exactly the nexus that I mentioned at the beginning of my address. Water, biodiversity, climate change, food, nutrition, all of these factors are inextricably linked. We must use our resources in a circular way, minimize waste to make supply chains more resilient and more sustainable. There are wonderful innovative approaches out there to achieve these goals. Agroforestry systems can improve soil health. Precision irrigation systems can have a tangible effect on saving water. The bioeconomy requires us not only to think differently, but also to use sustainable technologies with determination. All of that is part of the bioeconomy. So what sounded abstract and remote at first becomes very tangible when you look at the actual everyday applications. And the bioeconomy has long been part of our everyday life. There are fabrics made from bio-based materials such as lyocell, biodegradable plastics, algae cosmetics. All of these examples show how the economy and ecology can grow in harmony. They can also counteract the eutrophication of the seas and oceans. Fermentation technologies are used for producing beer, yogurt, sourdough bread. And these are traditional examples where state-of-the-art biotechnological procedures open up new opportunities for application, linking old knowledge and with new technologies. In the construction sector, too, we see impressive progress. One big issue when we talk about food and nutrition are also alternative proteins for climate-friendly diets that also reduce the pressure on agricultural land. These developments show that the bioeconomy can become even more relevant in all areas of life, from breakfast to house building. All of that is part of the bioeconomy. Today, we are looking to Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. These regions have great potential, and I'm very glad to see the ministers from Kazakhstan and Ukraine here today. These two countries are central players in agricultural production. Both countries are faced with the task of transforming their agriculture. Ukraine is taking advantage of the painful process of reconstruction to make its regional food system more sustainable and more resilient. Against the backdrop of its prospect of EU membership, it's driving reforms to modernize production to achieve the sustainability goals of the European Union. The bioeconomy can play a major role in this. But we also know that every opportunity also harbors risks and challenges. As we expand the bioeconomy, we have to make sure that it doesn't happen at the expense of the weakest. There are conflicting goals that we have to talk about between land use for food and energy, between economic gain and social justice. We have to address these issues honestly and frankly. What is decisive here is that resources and yields are distributed equally along the value chain, supply chains. At the same time, we have to ensure that innovations also reach the regions and communities that need support the most. We need clear political framework conditions, targeted investments, tasks that go way beyond the responsibility of agriculture ministers. It's not enough to develop technical solutions. We also need to develop educational and training programs to ensure that farmers can put innovations into practice. And another important point are global trade structures. Market access is crucial for many countries to be able to benefit from the bioeconomy. Protectionism or trade barriers can hamper this access and thus slow down the development of sustainable supply chains. So it is up to us to ensure that trade relations are fair and inclusive. Ladies and gentlemen, we can only tackle global challenges together, forming global partnerships. The GFFA is playing a huge role in this context. I'd say it's a unique platform that brings together so many decision makers. It promotes the exchange of ideas, but also practicable solutions. We see that countries such as Brazil and South Africa make the bioeconomy part of the global agenda. The G20 Bioeconomy Initiative is an important first step. Brazil has provided the G20 high-level principles on bioeconomy that show how we can achieve everything at once. Last autumn in Nairobi, Kenya, at the Global Bioeconomy Summit, we saw some first results. And we are glad to follow on from that, to build a bridge to South Africa's G20 presidency that will follow on this project. And it's a wonderful sign to see that initiatives are not singular anymore. We are working together across continents. Ladies and gentlemen, the bioeconomy is not an option. It's a necessity because it links together innovation and responsibility. It enables us to tackle the challenges of the 21st century with courage, determination, and with optimism. Only joint action will help us achieve our goals. The agriculture ministers worldwide play a key role in this. It's their fields and their forests where the bioeconomy begins. Their decisions sow the seeds of a more sustainable agricultural system. In this way, together, we secure the livelihoods of present and future generations. On this note, I hope you have not only an interesting panel discussion, but insightful discussions, and that is what the GFFA thrives on. Communication, dialogue, the networks that we create here, and then to find good, sustainable solutions for everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Parliamentary State Secretary Müller. I think you've set the right tone for the next steps that will happen here on this stage. Before we now dive into the topic of this topic, I'd like to introduce today's panelists. I'd like to start, ladies first, of course, with Ms. Kovalova from Ukraine. She's Chief Marketing Officer of the Smart Farming Group. She has many years of experience and was part of the Grow in Ukraine project, played a key role in publishing relevant data from Ukraine's agricultural industry. And as most of you probably know, Ukraine is well known for digital approaches and solutions, so everything with regard to increasing efficiency to support farmers using IT systems. And that is also her role at Smart Farming. So if I might say it so, we look forward to hearing to you as a practitioner on the field, to hear about bioeconomy in Ukraine, the Black Sea soil. Then I'd like to introduce Minister Vitaly Koval. He's here at the GFFA for the first time, as far as I know. Mr. Koval has been Agriculture Minister since 2024 of Ukraine. Before that, he held various positions at the regional level, but also as head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. And today he will surely enrich our discussion with his knowledge from the field of economic knowledge, banking knowledge, because all bioeconomy issues also have to do with the issues of capital and money somehow. And even if it's not super relevant for our context, maybe I would still like to mention that Mr. Kova is also part of the Ukraine Olympic Committee. So he's here as a sports person too. We'll see how that shows itself on the stage. It's wonderful to have you here, and I'd also like to underline once more the way here to the GFFA is long and hard for many people, but I think especially for our friends from Ukraine, a special thanks to you, because it's not normal travel conditions. It's much more complicated than you might think when you're not affected yourself. So thank you for making the effort. From much further away geographically, we have the Vice Minister, Mr. Saparov, is here on the slide, but Mr. Kanuli is actually here in person. He's Vice Minister of Agriculture of the Republic of Kazakhstan, honoring us with his presence here. He's responsible for phytosanitary security and international cooperation, and also for attracting investment in Kazakhstan. So for everyone who would like to go a step further in Kazakhstan, you will probably have the opportunity after this panel or later on during the other panels to talk to him. Vice Minister has a strong background in agro-business management in the UK and Korea, which are the topics of studies that he did. And over the past 10, 12 years, he held various positions in Kazakhstan's government, including Deputy Akin of the Aktobe region. So he also did very practical work, dealt with everyday issues that farmers have to deal with on the ground. So thank you very much. We look forward to your input. Then we have Oliver Gierlich, in a leading position at Bayer. He has been working on the global stage for over 30 years for the Bayer company, and since 2020 he has held his current position, CFO of Bayer in Kiev. He's also a member of the board of the European Business Association, and for the German context, he's also voluntary president of the IHK Trade Chamber in Ukraine. So beyond his position at Bayer, he's a good contact person to talk to about agricultural issues because he has his feet on the ground in Kiev, so to speak. It's wonderful to have you here, Mr. Gierlich. Thank you for continuing the dialogue.
Dr. Hermans.
Then we have Dr. Hermans, not last.
In der Vorstellungsrunde gleich an dieser Position erwähnt, weil Sie dann.
But we want to mention you now because you will shortly be giving a keynote speech, for which I'd like to thank you. And before I ask you to come up here to the lectern, I'd like to introduce you. Many of you probably know Dr. Franz Hermans. He's an experienced researcher and consultant specializing in agricultural innovation systems, sustainability transitions, and the bioeconomy. He has over 2 decades of experience in these areas, and I do think that you will be making a valuable contribution to this panel, sharing your perspective. And when we bring together all the perspectives, we will have a good, bigger picture. We will gain a good, bigger picture. I won't say too much about your CV, but you're a group leader at IAMO with regard to transition economies, and today you are so kind as to talk about your specialties as a consultant today. We look forward to your presentation.
Dankeschön für die Einleitung.
Thank you very much for these introductory remarks. Esteemed members of this panel, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased and it's a great honor to share some of my thoughts on the bioeconomy with you today. As has been mentioned before, my name is Franz Hermans. Over the past 10 years, I've been doing research for IAMO in Halle, the Leibniz Institute of Agricultural Development in Transition Economies. And today I'm an advisor on all issues of the bioeconomy and sustainable transformation. The term bioeconomy is understood differently around the world. We have English terms such as bio-based economy, knowledge-based bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy. And all of these terms are closely related but not at all identical. It would be going too far to talk about the various definitions, but I would like to start my remarks with a brief analysis in order to enable a more specific discussion after this. I will highlight two aspects of the bioeconomy, which according to me have the highest relevance for shedding light on possible transformation pathways towards the bioeconomy in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And these two aspects are the following: the form of agriculture and its position in the supply chain, and secondly, the innovation potential and organization of the knowledge and innovation system. So at first, about the role of agriculture. From the perspective of the bioeconomy, agriculture decides how biomass is produced and used. The bioeconomy uses the principles of the pyramid of biomass, and this concept can also be linked to various forms of agriculture. At the basis of the pyramid, we have the production of biomass, for example, for energy. Slightly above, we have specialized crops that can be used as raw materials for biorefineries. So we're talking about large quantities, and in these areas, it's especially cost aspects that matter. Agriculture with a focus on mass production. But as we climb up the pyramid from industrial materials to, as the and State Secretary gave some examples, and if we go up to food and fodder, the efficiency of conversion becomes even more important. At the top, we have applications with high value creation, such as pharmaceuticals, so drugs, or cosmetics, such as high-quality skincare products. And here, we're talking less about volume produced by agriculture, but the controlled cultivation of specialized crops, such as medicinal plants. These agricultural practices can exist in parallel and often depend on regional conditions and historical developments. For example, in Germany, we see a mixture of various farming models. We have large businesses in the east and smaller family-run businesses in the south. It's an example of this diversity that we have. This brings me to my second point of innovation potential and the organization of the knowledge and innovation system. Innovation in the bioeconomy is on a much broader base than the biotechnology. Looking at the agricultural sector, we see various forms of knowledge that are being used. Farmers in Europe, at least, enjoy an increasingly high-quality education and training. It's still experience passed on from generation to generation that remains an important source of knowledge and innovation. On the other side, we see formal knowledge that is being used and that we see in the biotechnology sector when it comes to patents, the filing of patents. So this combination agricultural potential and the capability of a country to generate and use knowledge, that is what determines the variety of transformation pathways that are possible. I define transformation pathways as a description of the ways in which countries can transform traditional systems towards more sustainable, more efficient models. There are three central transformation pathways that are characterized by different focuses and targets. Firstly, we have transformation pathways where innovation focuses on increasing the productivity of primary production. This includes technologies and practices that increase yields, optimize resource use, and promote the sustainability of agriculture. For example, precision irrigation systems, improved fertilizers, low pesticide cultivation methods. These pathways are particularly relevant in regions where the agricultural basis is strong but has not yet fully been put to use. Secondly, there are transformation pathways that focus on the middle of the pyramid of biomass, that is increasing the efficiency of industrial conversion of biomass. This is about innovation in the processing and use of biomass, for example, through more efficient biorefineries or technologies that minimize waste flows and make better use of side products. The development of this pathway depends very much on suitable regulation and responsible consumer behavior, because a demand for sustainably produced materials and energy have a major impact on this pathway. Thirdly, we have what is called the science push pathways that are based on biotechnology innovations. This focuses on progressive technologies such as the omics disciplines, including genomics, proteomics, microbiomics, to name just a few, that enable a deep understanding of biological systems. These approaches have the potential to bring about radical transformation because they create new environmentally friendly products or revolutionize existing processes. At the same time, however, they are very demanding because they require strong investment in research and development and comprehensive regulatory and infrastructural support efforts. Despite these challenges, these approaches harbor an enormous potential for the future of the bioeconomy. It's also important for me to underline that these pathways should not be looked at individually. They can exist in parallel or one after the other, and they can also be complementary. This enables the step-by-step sustainable transformation towards a future-proof bioeconomy. At the end, finally, I'd like to underline how important cooperation among various actors is in the bioeconomy. Innovations don't only happen in the labs, but are based on exchange, dialogue, cooperation between farmers, research institutions, and companies in the region of Eastern Europe and Central Asia, and in particular in countries such as Ukraine and Kazakhstan. Bioeconomy principles have not only the potential to increase efficiency, but also to promote a sustainable and future-proof agricultural system. Dialogue between agricultural players can produce innovative solutions that don't only strengthen competitiveness, but also play a role with regard to global food security. And this brings me to my favorite pet topic, with which I'd like to end my talk here, and that is the role of bioclusters. Bioclusters can play a key role because these clusters are regional networks that bring together agricultural businesses, research institutes, and companies to exchange and share knowledge. By doing so, they offer a space for sharing knowledge and the joint development of technologies that enable us to find sustainable solutions and link them with economic efficiency. So strong cooperation can provide a strong basis for the future, not only in that region, but around the world. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to talking to you in more depth during this panel and the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hermans. I think you framed it nicely. and you established a connection between the stakeholders that are represented. It's about getting the best possible result, and it's a team sport. You can't do it on your own, whether you're in agriculture, in politics, or in the industrial sector. So I think this was a good start to our podium, which will hopefully allow us to go a bit deeper, dive a bit deeper into the individual issues. I would like to start with Minister Kowal, if that's okay with you. I don't think he'll be surprised that before we talk about the bio-based economy, this audience would like to get a short update about the state of Ukrainian agriculture in the face of the war waged on you by Russia. And then in the second round of the discussion, we'll go even deeper. So you can already think first about the definition of the bio-based economy. But of course, first of all, we would like to know how the Ukrainian agricultural sector, how Ukrainian farmers are doing. You have the floor.
Доброго дня, колеги. Надзвичайно приємно бути тут і чути теплі слова в сторону України. Дійсно, сьогодні для нас
It is great to be here, distinguished colleagues. It's also good to hear these friendly words directed at us. And to all the representatives of the agricultural business, well, let me tell you that we are resilient because we have so much agriculture, so many farmers. And Ukraine is a highly resilient country. That's what defines us. There are 200,000 farmers in our armed forces. They are fighting, and we've lost around 20% of our area. That's the present figure. And this, of course, also means that our economy is suffering a great deal. Our harvest has fallen by 20%. In 2021, we had 106 million tons of crops. And now that figure has dropped to 76 million tons. That includes crops and oil plants. But it's important to continue to sow. It's also important for us to understand the past. Around 100 years ago, Ukraine suffered the worst famine in its history. And this was the only time in history where the Soviet Union prevented us from sowing and harvesting. At the time, they created this situation, and around 10 million people died of hunger and of sickness. This is part of our DNA. It must not happen again. And even if they are threatened with attacks or if they risk treading on mines, our farmers will continue to sow. And there are sad accidents like this, but everybody knows that we cannot allow this to happen again. It's very important to us. And the question of food security around the world is very important. We have responsibility for this. This world needs to be fed. And you know how many million people are suffering hunger or malnutrition. And we are one of the nations to have suffered such a very bad famine. And President Zelensky's initiative is one that we hope will gain the support of your countries. It also helps us supply African countries. I also visited Syria a short while ago, And we talked to colleagues over there, and we saw how bad Syria is doing in terms of food security. All of the civilized world should be helping. And we, Ukraine, a country that is uniquely placed, should help. So by helping our farmers supply the Middle East and Africa, and that is something that helps both our economy and food security across the world. So we are trying to make things as easy as possible. For instance, in terms of the bio-based economy, it's a sustainable form of the economy. Well, what can we do? We need to ask ourselves, do we want our children to have a worse life than we had? No, we need to pass on at least as much of nature and natural resources to our children as we inherited from our parents. That's our responsibility, even at this time of war. We must not let up. And we are thinking about the situation of the future. We are part of the European family. We are also one of the most important countries in the world for food security. And we know that every day we are suffering attacks. Our economy is suffering. Our ports, some of our ports are not operating anymore. The silos and all these different parts of the agricultural industry are being destroyed, but we want to build it back better. And this needs to be done on the basis of the bio-based economy. And whenever we rebuild or refurbish something, we always think about these principles and apply them. And this really gives meaning to our agricultural policy. Yesterday, Ms. Müller said, when she delivered some statistics, she said that more than 50% of global production is based on natural resources. So this is why we need to maintain nature and natural resources. And this is where the bio-based economy will help us. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Herr Minister, für den Rückblick, die aktuelle Bewertung der Situation und aber auch das, was Sie mit dem Thema Erbe angesprochen haben.
Thank you very much for giving us this update and also about your words about this principle that we don't want to pass on less than you've got from the previous generation. So it's about build back better and on the basis of the bioeconomy. So it's a 4B strategy. I think that's quite remarkable. So thank you for sharing this with us and also for sharing with us that Syria is something that you are committed to despite the suffering of your country. So this is a good forum here today to find people who will support you in your efforts. So thank you very much. You've given us a very positive example, I think. Now I would like to move east to East Asia to Vice Minister. And I would like to give us an update of the Kazakhstan situation. So your 9th largest country in the world. So what's the role of the bio-based economy and the circular economy in Kazakhstan? And perhaps you could also tell us about efficiency, resource optimization, and so forth. And I would really like to know about the relevance of this issue for your country. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank you for this invitation to this very important invitation to Green Week. Kazakhstan is an important stakeholder in the global economy. It is also very important in helping to secure global food security. We support the measures taken or being discussed here at Grüne Woche. Kazakhstan has been an active member of Grüne Woche for years. We have our own stand, and we would like to continue our commitment. Of course, global food security is a highly important issue that needs to be high up on the global agenda, and all agricultural ministries are focused on this issue. Kazakhstan is no exception. Our country has large land resources, as you know. But our job, the job of our president, is to increase GDP and actually double GDP. This ambition has been set out, and we want to achieve this in a situation where our land and water resources are, of course, limited. So it's a major challenge for us also to ensure global food security. At present, Kazakhstan itself has food security. We are self-sufficient as far as the most important food categories are concerned, and we also supply other countries. But of course, it's not only important to secure our own food security, but also to contribute to global food security and to double GDP. And this also needs to be viewed in context, so doubling GDP and global food security. You have already talked about the bio-based economy. Well, for us, doubling GDP is the most important ambition for us, and it's high up on our agenda. We want to achieve this through efficiency, through higher yields and in our harvests. At present, we have 25 million hectares of arable land, and by using high-quality seeds, modern technology, highly efficient irrigation systems, and other innovations that we are already implementing in our daily lives have allowed us to harvest a record yield of 27 million tons. This means that we can, of course, export more on the world market. Kazakhstan has set itself the task of actually promoting green agriculture. We are working together with the German Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture. We have our agriculture dialogue, and of course, the participants are here in this room. We've created a legal framework for green agriculture, and we understand that there is high demand for green products. We can see this. We have correctly assessed the situation, and Kazakhstan is interested in promoting green exports. Our farmers are highly interested in this, and they will be motivated by us as well, so that they can actually export organic foods and that they use organic fertilizers and so forth. So Kazakhstan is a global supplier of food, and we are interested in the development of the bio-based economy through the use of new technologies.
Herzlichen Dank an Sie, Herr Vizeminister. Ich glaube, Sie haben es relativ klar und einfach gesagt, eine Verdoppelung.
So you've been very clear. You've said you want to double GDP. You also talked of modernization. So I think the GFFA is a perfect forum for this. it's about modern technology, advanced seeds, and so forth. This is really an opportunity for you to use these technologies in your country. And you also said that organic food plays a very important role, and that goes beyond self-supplies. That also goes about exports. So thank you very much for your contribution. We now need to move on to the next speaker. And of course, we want to have more than rounds of questions. So we are now leaving the governmental level and go back to the management level. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Kovalova. So the bioeconomy, do you see this as a key issue or key future issue, a trend emerging in Ukraine? And what are the ideas of the Smart Farming Group regarding this?
З вашого дозволу я продовжу українською, хоча могла би пробувати іншою мовою.
Okay, so I'll be speaking in Ukrainian, even though I could be using other languages. Anyways, I will be talking you something about smart farming. So for around 10 years, we've been on the Ukrainian market, and we are helping the Ukrainian farmers to be more efficient by using advanced technologies. Let's go back to the question posed by the distinguished moderator, facilitator. So when we think of the bio-based economy, then the first that comes to mind is efficiency, efficient use of resources, efficient production, and so forth. And digital technologies are the very basis of better efficiency, which is why we have created a broad range of products. We mostly rely on technologies that allow us to really do precision seeds, and we also differentiate the use of phytosanitary products. We can also assess the situation of the soil, the quality of the soil, and we are measuring different parameters. So we're using drones and satellites to monitor our fields, and we also use digital solutions to gather data, process this data, and improve our strategies regarding irrigation, fertilizers, and that way we can actually further develop agriculture in Ukraine and help both large agricultural business and small farmers. Of course, this is by no means an easy feat. The bio-based economy is fairly new to Ukraine, or Ukraine is new to the bio-based economy, and the market players are seeing this as a new option.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much.
Das war ein digitales Statement.
So this was actually a digital statement, so to speak. Also, the speed at which it was delivered was from the digital age. So you've given us a very accurate picture of the possibilities that Ukraine has, especially with regard to new solutions that are open to Ukrainian farmers. And you're doing something that many in Western Europe are still talking about, and that's quite remarkable. But at the same, of course, it helps to have good quality soil and humus, and it also helps to have large fields. Let's now come to phytosanitary products. So I'd like to talk to the managing director of Bayer Crop Science. So what are your connections with the bio-based economy, using Ukraine as an example or other countries? As a leading producer not only of phytosanitary products but also of seeds and digital solutions. We are, of course, active in many different areas. Let's start from a bird's perspective. So organic phytosanitary products are very important. We're moving away from fossil-based phytosanitary products. At the same time, we're improving our efficiency, and we are getting to the point where there are organic or bio-based phytosanitary products. Seeds are, of course, important too. Ukraine has one of our largest seed production facilities. We are no longer using gas to dry the crops. We are actually using, for instance, for corn or maize, we're using the actual seeds, and we recycle the bio-waste, and we do this in a way that saves or that prevents CO2 emissions. So we are actually using green energy. We're no longer using energy for drying. We have established a full circle. Then we then give the leaves that we also receive in order for them to be processed into biofuels. So this is a way in which the circular economy is actually possible. Mr. Hammonds has already told us that all of this is not only possible on our own. We are also working together closely with farmers in order to establish crop rotation, for instance. We try to prevent the need for plowing, for pressing soil. So it's very important to work together closely. Digital solutions have already been mentioned. We are, of course, one of the largest suppliers of digital solutions. To give you another example, only last year we launched the Digital for Ukraine initiative, which means that apart from large farmers and SME agricultural businesses that already rely on these tools, we are also giving 300 small farmers the possibility to use this technology, which means that they can optimize irrigation, the use of fertilizers and phytosanitary products, and that allows them to increase their yields and reduce pesticides or fertilizers. Let's move on to another issue. This is about seed development. You know traditional cornfields. You know that the plants will get to around 2.5 meters high, and I think that will change. So we've developed a corn crop that has very short stems, and this means that it uses less water, requires less water, less fertilizer, and less phytosanitary products. It's also more resistant against the weather because the stems won't break as easily, and the plant will focus on less on its growth and more on the actual fruit, which means that we can increase efficiency. So again, it's important to look at what we can do, but also how we can cooperate with others so that we have the best possible result. Thank you very much, Mr. Gerlich. I think that was a very tangible example, in particular with regard to the crops. We know that these are not fossil fuels, that it makes more sense to actually use waste products. I would like to give us a bit of a break on this podium, because now we'll have it more interactive for our audiences who've been listening patiently for around an hour, and we'll have a small Slido vote. So you're now allowed to take your mobile phones out, and you can actually participate in this round.
Also es gibt keine Noten, das kann ich gleich sagen.
I can tell you this much. You won't be marked for your answers.
So, konnten alle abstimmen?
Have you all been able to participate in the poll? To cast your vote? Some mobile phones are still up in the air, so to say.
So, ich glaube jetzt die erste Umfrage haben wir durch. Dann würde ich gerne die Kollegen...
So the first poll has concluded. I'd like to ask our colleagues on the technical side to show us the results. Do I have to cast my vote too? Ah, okay.
Also ich glaube, wir haben hier eine deutliche
So I believe the result is quite clear. It requires sufficiently accessible modern agricultural technologies to make the next step. And I think that is exactly what we will try to shed more light on in the second round on this panel. And there will be a second poll where we would like you to get involved shortly. So thank you very much for casting your vote. And this brings us back to the panel.
Und ich möchte mich gerne wieder an Herrn Minister Kowal
And I'd like to start with Minister Kowal again.
der Frage
I'd like to ask you the following question.
der Ukraine in 10 Jahren. Und ich
Where
weiß,
do you see Ukraine's agriculture 10 years from now? And I know this is looking into the glass ball, but altogether, in the context of the bioeconomy, what role will the bioeconomy probably play then 10 years from now in Ukraine's agricultural system, which will have developed much further, of course? Thank you for your statement.
Я хочу прорефлексувати на слова.
I would like to reflect on what has been said before. Mr. Gielich said smaller corn stems mean that water use will decrease. I do believe 10 years from now, the corn will harvest, dry, and stock itself independently without us at all. Technology will be that important. And everything that we say about Ukraine now has to be looked at through the prism of the war that is going on in our country. And that's important for us to be independent and sovereign also when it comes to ensuring our food security. And when we talk about sustainable development, we see that it's important that every sector should be independent and have its own circular systems. And 10 years from now, not only in Ukraine, but also in other countries, we will have regions that, based on innovation and collaborations, will develop in exactly this way. It's also important to have waste management, to consider that topic, a highly relevant topic. 12% of what is being produced in agriculture never ends up on the table it's lost during the harvest or rots away as it's stored. So we have these losses, and now we have major capacities for improved stocking and storage, particularly when it comes to vegetables. In the first month of the war, our enemy attacked and destroyed the 3 largest storage facilities for potatoes and vegetables around Kiev, and that was also a means of increasing pressure. So we need good management of storage facilities and storage processes to really consider these aspects of demand and production, to ensure that there's no inflation, basically, and not so much loss. A second point is the destruction of the Kafka Dam that you've seen. So this huge water reservoir that flowed towards the Crimea, and what we now have is 1.5 hectares of Ukrainian soil that require irrigation, and we now have a water deficit. So we urgently need water for irrigation. Soils salinate, erode, and the war means that we have a water shortage because the water doesn't reach the region where it's needed. So now we should focus on saving water, using water more efficiently, because water shortage will become even more pertinent. And that is what we need to focus on today as we take action. And of course, agriculture develops in parallel with other sectors. And for us, the potential is also in the energy sector. Half of our power generation has been lost. From 18, only 9 gigawatt of energy production capacity remain. The other 9 have been destroyed or are in occupied areas where we don't have access. For example, the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia. So today we need biotechnology for electricity generation by using waste, for example. That is the future. Biomethane is a groundbreaking element that is pointing in the right direction. We can also use cows to produce methane, biogas, that we can then use for power generation. And of course, we are part of the European family that we need to integrate to ensure energy security. And agriculture can play a role in energy security, and that is not a thing of the future. It's the future happening now already. So more innovation, taking bolder action when it comes to decision-making, that is what we have already had to do. We have to make decisions today. If you want to change something tomorrow, you have to start today, because maybe there is no tomorrow. And that is our message to our European family. Reforms should be initiated today. Thank you very much, Minister, for your sometimes futuristic remarks, but also very clear remarks that you've made. You highlighted waste management, that we don't talk about enough yet, water and energy that play elementary roles looking to the future. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the Vice Minister from Kazakhstan to get you in here and ask you the same question, more or less. When it comes to what's happening in Kazakhstan with regard to the bioeconomy, is it a strategic phase that will come next? Where do you see Kazakhstan's agriculture in 2035, so 10 years from now? Thank you very much for that question. Of course, in Kazakhstan, our strategy for the future means that we have very specific plans. We have a strategy for developing the agricultural complex until 2030. And based on that strategy, we have very clear descriptions of where we're going. the direction in which developments should go, and the goals that we have by 2030. And as I said during my first remarks, we want to double GDP. That is our universal goal that we have to and need to achieve. And the second task that we've given ourselves is to double export production as a result of last year. We reached a level of approximately 5 billion euros, meaning that in the next 5 to 10 years, we expect this sum to exceed $10 billion. That means that we also have to consider our limitations that we, of course, have because of limited water resources in our soils. And in this context, we have to consider increasing efficiency and increasing yields. Kazakhstan is a huge country. We have 24 million hectares of arable land, but we see major differences among the various regions. In our northern regions, we have huge arable lands, more than 50,000 or 100,000 hectares in the various regions. In one region, 1 million hectares. But in the southern regions, we see small areas of arable land and smallholder farmers with only up to 10 hectares. And in that situation, it is important to it is difficult to have a universal agricultural policy because the regions differ that much. So for different regions, we need different rules and regulations, and we need different reforms that have to be carried out. And as I said before, increasing yields is our major task. We also have to introduce technologies to save water. And for 150,000 hectares, we've run experiments where we plan to also use German technologies to introduce water-saving technologies. 150,000 hectares should be transformed to make use of such technologies every year, and that is a huge, comprehensive task for which we need state-of-the-art technology that enables us to save water resources. Whether it's droplet irrigation or other forms of water-saving irrigation. We are also using laser technology, both in the area of cotton cultivation and vegetable cultivation, and we see good results here. Around 50% is the rate at which we can save water thanks to the deployment of laser technology. Then, of course, there's society, and we also have plant protection because we have large areas of arable land, and this also means major problems with pests. We are using pesticides offered by Bayer. We also use BPLAs when it comes to pollination and pesticides, because we want to limit the presence of grasshoppers, locusts, and we need to use new technologies to achieve this aim. Our water consumption can be reduced further in this way. And at the same time, we can increase harvests and yields, which in turn raises the income of our farmers and increases the export potential of Kazakhstan. So our universal task is to not only save water resources, but also implement precision agriculture because we have large arable regions where we can save further, save seeds, for example, save soil management efforts, and so forth. So what we see is that we won't be able to achieve our goals if we don't use state-of-the-art technology when it comes to ensuring our food security. Thank you.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Vizeminister.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. One example really answered a question that I wanted to ask, and that is, how can Germany's agribusiness sector support you in the best way when it comes to achieving your goals? And then also the buzzword of precision agriculture that rings a bell with many people here in this room. And this brings me back to Ukraine, to Ms. Kovalova. When it comes to the digital transformation, do you see a digital bottleneck? Because so far, digitalization doesn't seem to have any limit in Ukraine. Talking about digitalization, digital technology as such, then of course we are also talking about certain disadvantages and risks. Digital technologies offers major opportunities, but it also brings disadvantages with it. The potential of introducing digital technology in our sector in Ukraine is huge. We have a huge potential for introducing digital solutions, cloud solutions, artificial intelligence, and so on. But a lot of market research also shows that about 50% of Ukraine's farmers don't have access to digital technologies. As the Smart Farming Group, we continuously face the problem again and again that one country wants to use a certain digital technology, such as artificial intelligence, to use fertilizers, but technology on the ground is outdated and is not compatible with these modern solutions. So it becomes impossible to use artificial intelligence in this specific machine, and that is something that we see very often. Other bottlenecks, digital bottlenecks, that make digital technology inaccessible to Ukrainian farmers exist not only with regard to available digital technologies, but also the lack of funding and financing for using such technologies. Opportunities for developing infrastructure in rural areas, so the opportunities in rural areas are much fewer and weaker than in the cities and urban areas. But we have many cases where major agribusinesses create and establish the infrastructure in rural areas and thereby support small and medium-sized businesses in the rural areas. They offer grants, for example. They offer different services to these farmers and agricultural producers to be able to make use of certain infrastructure and technologies. And back to the topic of the digital bottleneck, information security plays a role. Not long ago, we saw a hacking attack on our government registries, and that had major ramifications for our government. So that is also a digital bottleneck.
щоб системи та рішення, які використовують агровиробники, могли обмінюватися цією інформацією та забезпечувати доступ до повної бази
systems
даних.
used by agricultural producers also have to be accessible from different locations.
Саме вузьких місць
This enables more efficiency and an increase of the efficiency of digital solutions. And that's what I can say about bottlenecks.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much.
Sehr wichtig, wie wir verstehen.
Data protection is very important to understand the risks. And Mr. Gielich, could you maybe limit yourself to 3 sentences because we are running out of time again? Maybe you can say in 3 sentences about Ukraine and the insights that you have. Where do you see potential for the bioeconomy in Ukraine, not only for your company, but in general? In the first round, I touched on various issues that play a role at the global and Ukrainian level. Ukraine was a pilot country for us to promote the topic of carbon capture in cooperation with farmers. Unfortunately, the war then ended our efforts. We had to end projects because many of our partners were harmed and massively by the war. But following on what Ms. Kovalova said, there were a lot of outdated old machines. And this war that is against international law indeed poses a perfect moment to act on this. Many machines have been stolen. There's a great need for replacement. And this offers a great opportunity to use modern technologies that require modern machines that require modern technologies, for example, avoiding plowing, cover crops, etc. So the opportunity is there's a much bigger opportunity now than in previous times. What would hamper these efforts is that 200,000 members of staff in the agricultural sectors now serve in the war, so there's a lack of workers, and somebody has to actually do what we plan to do. So there are some points that don't make things easier in using the situation that is actually a good one and lends itself to changing things. And the second point I'd like to make is that we all know the images of missiles hitting fields and drones, but what we are discussing less are poisoned fields, contaminated fields. And then the question is, should I use a field for human consumption or for biofuels? And there are people who are really strongly against biofuel cultivation, but there will be fields that will be contaminated for years in Ukraine, and these fields actually lend themselves to the cultivation of biofuels and the production of biofuels. And that is something that we should think about early on to make sure that the fields don't remain unused and lie idle, but are used to human benefit.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you.
Ja, das Thema Verseuchung, und wir hatten bei einem
The topic of contamination and the decades for which this will last. It will be a task for an entire generation to correct this. And now I've been told that we should now come to the second poll, where you can be involved actively. The Vice Minister and Minister also need to leave us soon to go to their next appointments. So a final poll.
Das ist unsere 30-second pitch sozusagen.
Before that, we will have what we call our 30-second pitch. What is your greatest hope? What would you like to see in your area, in your country, in your business with regard to what 2025 should bring to the agricultural sector? So your number one priority
Minister
Kowal, in sticking with the previous order, I'd like to ask you to share your statement first. Thank you very much. Of course, you understand that my first hope is self-evident, and it's the same for every person in Ukraine, is to win this war. And what would winning this war mean for us? Victory mean for us? Victory, that would mean that it becomes impossible for all of this to happen again. So not only to end occupation of our fields, but to make sure in cooperation with the whole world that this won't happen ever again, that the whole world is united in preventing that something like this could ever happen again. And my second hope is to end hunger in the world, hunger and starvation. Everybody has the right to good food and access to high-quality food and nutrition. There shouldn't be a single mother that has to face the choice, will I give the little food that I have to myself or to my child? And that is my hope. That is what I want to see, that my country, just like any other country, lives in a sustainable world with good ecology, that our children receive more from us than we received from our parents when we were young. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. From the bottom of my heart, I can only support your hope. Vice Minister, please.
Конечно, в сфере сельского хозяйства очень тяжело назвать основные вещи, потому что...
Of course, it's very hard to talk about priorities in our agriculture because we have major things that need to happen in all sectors of our agricultural system. I would want all families to have access to food, to ensure food security in all countries, to make agriculture highly profitable so that people don't have to move from rural areas to urban areas, but the other way around, because agricultural business are profitable, are based on, can follow ecological principles, because agriculture brings joy and profits to all families that work in that sector. I would hope that we breathe life into agriculture, that it can develop. Thank you. Thank you very much also to you. Ms. Kovalova, please.
Власне, я повністю і цілковито підтримую перші два бажання пана міністра. Перемоги Україні і неповторення.
Absolutely concur with the hopes of my minister that Ukraine should win this war and that no country should ever face a war like that. My big hope for Ukraine is to become a center of global bioeconomy. If we are able to ensure investment and international partnerships, then we can reach this through innovation. That's my hope. I think it's feasible. Thank you very much. Mr. Gierlich, maybe it's hard to be fourth in this question. Well, the right things have been said already, but coming back to the bioeconomy, it really is linking politics, agriculture, industry. Here, this needs to happen, and I hope for open, honest dialogue, for the investment to be there, for improvements to regulations, no over-regulation, but setting of standards to ensure that the whole potential of the bioeconomy can be used, and we don't fail because of the framework conditions. Thank you very much to you, the esteemed panelists, this morning. It has been a pleasure to have you here, despite your busy schedules for today. I'd also like to thank our partners, YAMO, BMEL, but I'd also like to thank the interpreters who made sure that we speak one language here today. I'd like to ask for a round of applause for the interpreters. They have enabled us to have this discussion.
Ansonsten meine kleine Zusammenfassung.
Now this leaves me with a short summary of today's topic. It's an important topic for us. We've seen various examples from various different levels that show us that we are still at the very beginning, but this means that we have great potential, and what we can pass on to future generations also has great potential. And it's not only a moral impetus to do that, but it's also a huge responsibility that we have. Once more, thank you. I'd like to ask the panelists to remain on the stage for a family picture, and then afterwards the program and agenda will continue as planned. Thank you all very much for being here, for your attention, and I hope to see you again very soon to talk about this topic or other topics. Thank you.